Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some malicious compliance, but not only malicious compliance. Today we have an HOA special. Every single story deals with HOAs. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Before we start, if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's completely free and a subscription a day keeps the Karens away. Alright, our first story today comes to us from Wabi-Sabi Girl. HOA wants me to build a shorter fence? Got it. Let's jump right in. I'm piggybacking off the HOA trend going on around here. This story was relayed to me by one of my favorite professors over 5 years ago, so my apologies if the details are foggy or inaccurate. My professor was a very private person, the sort of guy who would hesitate to tell you his favorite color if you hadn't known him long enough. He had recently had an incredibly nosy couple move in next door and realized the flimsy 4-foot fence he had got for the dog wouldn't keep out peeping eyes. So he installed a fence, but instead of using a standard size, which he knew his neighbors would peer over, he built an 8-foot fence. It wasn't even a week before HOA was on his butt, threatening every fine they could and claiming he couldn't have a fence over 6 feet tall. So, being a dutiful citizen, he called the fence company to uninstall said fence. While the fence was being taken down, he closely examined the HOA handbook on the precise definition of a fence. He installed a new 6-foot fence that fit every single regulation, but with a 3-foot brick wall beneath it. Now, OP added an edit onto the story. It says, "A lot of people are pointing out that they've seen a story like this here or on Tumblr. I acknowledge karma farming is a major thing, but I am relaying the story as I heard it. I have plenty more from him. Granted, they don't fit in this sub. He used them to illustrate points mostly, like one about the horrendous public transport of Galveston, where he literally ran through people's yards. I don't know if his stories were true. Honestly, I bet many of them weren't, but he was a real man. I'd share his name if I felt it was okay. He served Cuban coffee during office hours. We got a random sub towards the end of the semester because he had a triple bypass that he had told none of us about. Truthfully, I don't know if he's even alive, which is one of the reasons I wanted to share this. I have no way to make people believe that I am telling the truth, but if you look through the comments here, several people say they've heard of or even done similar things. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we actually got a bonus story from a user called Redwald Rex. It says, exactly the same thing happened with me. We live in an old house in a village in rural England. We are only the second family to ever live there after the very elderly original owners moved out. It has a very large L-shaped garden going around the side and front of the house, and a tiny 3-meter by 3-meter back courtyard garden. The property is strange as our front gate is down a secluded footpath, but the side of our property abuts the main road. The old boy who lived here before had a very small white picket fence around the garden right next to the main road. He used to be into his gardening and would chat to people over the fence and at the bus stop on the road. He also let people cut through the garden to the village green rather than walking around. We have 3 children, and after several incidences of delivery people and even villagers jumping the fence to use our garden as a shortcut, we decided to put a 6-foot fence up for safety, meaning people had to walk around our garden and our kids could be out there in peace. Not 2 days later, we got a letter from the parish council saying 6-feet fences are not allowed at the front of a property and it needs to be 4 feet. Thus was odd as the fence in question was at the side of our property. We were not addressed on the main road, but on the road the footpath leads to. So I ignored the letter. Again, they wrote to us and said they'd be reporting us to the planning office or something if we didn't take it down. I decided to write back saying that it is the side of our property and said any more letters will result in the fence being painted shocking pink. They were very preoccupied with what the village looked like. They obviously checked and confirmed what I said as I received no more letters and it's been 10 years. We actually had a really similar story in yesterday's malicious compliance video. If you haven't seen that one yet, I'll link it down below, go check that one out. But there's a lot of stories about fences being built and being too large for the HOAs, and then the fences either being taken down and replaced with hedges, or put on a wall in this case, or a berm built in, the fence put on top of that. What I've learned from this whole thing is that you never underestimate what people with money will do to screw an HOA. This next story comes to us from Flavius Lascivious. HOA, a mansion, and the view. Let's jump right in. I lived in this town surrounded by magnificent vistas. There was a small development on the outskirts for upscale homes and mansions. Below the development were a few older homes. Many celebrities and business owners had vacation properties in the area. Multi-million-dollar houses they used maybe 1 month out of the year. Real estate had always been at a premium. There was one older home amongst all these giant view lots. A new buyer was a guy who owned a slew of RV dealerships and had obscene amounts of money, so he bought the most prominent lot on top of the hill as you entered the development of maybe 20 lots. His project was a massive stucco structure with a multi-car garage and a much bigger RV storage space with a huge roll-up garage door. Think of the biggest RVs you've seen, and he had a garage built for it with an automatic door. The house was a nondescript sand color with a red tiled roof, and the entire lot was tastefully landscaped with different kinds of rocks, small mounds here and there, and a few shrubs to be low maintenance. The back of the property was fenced in with an 8-foot or higher block wall. The fence itself probably cost $100,000. His neighbor was a school teacher who had lived there before the development started and had a modest house. He decided to take advantage of the skyrocketing land prices in the neighborhood and sell. Except no one wanted his crappy house when there were much larger empty lots available. He decided the real issue was that the new behemoth blocked his view, and that's why no one wanted to buy his 3-bedroom ranch house at mansion prices. It was really that his home didn't appeal to the market. So he became the president of the HOA, which included the older homes and the new development. And then the harassment started. The HOA had formed after the RV mansion construction had begun, but the home was so big it took almost a year to finish. The HOA had passed a design theme rule that all houses must be painted in a specific color palette, with the predominant color being a taupe that was darker than this man's standard beige stucco color house. The palette included the taupe and a selection of trim colors in pink, teal, or tan. It was intended to give the community a Santa Fe look and feel, which just happened to be the colors of the president's crappy house. The RV owner took the HOA to court, and the trial dragged on for a year. The guy never used the property, claiming it was still under construction during this time. He lost in court and had to repaint his property using only the design theme approved colors. So the guy brought out his contractor and had him repaint the entire property the Pepto-Bismol pink trim color. Everything was painted this color: the house, the fence, the trim, and the rocks in the yard. Then he had the massive driveway to the garage done in the same pink stamped concrete. Even the garage doors were pink. He locked up the house and never stayed there. The HOA was in an uproar because this house could be seen at the top of the hill for miles. None of the other lot owners broke ground. The president's home didn't sell for 2 years. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a guy called 9 Lowball Dude. It says, the teacher thought that he was going to out-crook the owner of several RV dealerships? OP responded with, this guy was legendary in the community, and he never lived there or used the house. Everyone hated that school teacher, which made it so much better. Well, I don't know about you all listening to the story, but I want the kinda F you money that RV guy has, because being able to paint your complete property in Pepto-Bismol pink and just never go there again, but not have to worry about the money you spent on it? How do I get that? I mean, I still look at the price of hot dogs in the grocery store. This next story comes to us from OK13240, another HOA story. Let's jump right in. I've seen a bunch of HOA stories lately and have never shared a malicious compliance before, but I've been inspired to share this story from my parents. This was about 10 years ago, 2010-ish. My family lived in a very nice gated community with an HOA. It was during the summer, and most weekends we would bring our boat to the house on Friday nights to take out on Saturdays, and then move it back to where we stored it Saturday night. HOA had a rule where you aren't allowed to keep boats within view of the street. Our driveway ran up beside the house and we'd intentionally positioned it to be as invisible as possible. For the one night it would be there. Basically, all that was visible was a small T-top over my dad's truck. Our HOA was actually pretty awesome, super laid back, and really only did anything when there was a complaint. It was a relatively small neighborhood, less than 50 houses, and the HOA was really good at throwing monthly parties where we'd shut down a cul-de-sac and everyone would bring food and music and we'd all have fun. This was kind of what an HOA is supposed to be in theory, a good thing. Well, Karen had made a complaint to the board about our boat and had provided timestamped photos of multiple violations, mind you, one night a week, but she'd claimed it was consistent. The president came by to tell us and it wasn't there when he was. We told him our side of the story. Basically, it was only there for about 12 hours on the weekend, and he said he nor anyone on the board had ever noticed it, but since they had a complaint, they had to request we remove it. I completely doubt they'd actually fine or do anything past asking, but rules are rules. Cue my father's mastery of the art of malicious compliance. Well, an important bit of information about this piece of property: when the neighborhood was built, my dad bought the house, as well as a property bordering the back of ours that was not a part of the HOA, or in the neighborhood, and originally had a small chain link fence between it and the house. It was accessible through a small street with a few homes on it bordering our neighborhood. Well, my dad's beautiful brain started thinking about, and for the cost and inconvenience of storing it at a storage place, he could probably just build a pad for it behind the house. He had a gravel pad put in the corner of the property with a shed over it, intentionally as close to the edge of the property so it would preserve the view out the back, or be very visible from the front of the house, either one. There wasn't any real backlash about it. Apparently, Karen brought it up again, and the board politely informed her that they had no control over that property, and I think she admitted defeat. The board actually found it pretty funny and never had any other issues with them. Karen moved about a year later, and my parents moved about 2 years ago. Loved the neighborhood though, genuinely a positive HOA experience, just an annoying Karen to make life inconvenient. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have an interesting interaction between two users. The first one is called Miss SLA, and they said, "I hope someday to have F you, I'm building a shed to annoy you money." This was responded to by Kuchi Sabishi. I hope I got that right. It says, "I do and I did. I live in an HOA. I could write a few stories about that. And when I moved in, they made it clear that no permanent buildings such as sheds were allowed. That's how it was worded in the CCs and ours. So I put one on wheels. Every once in a while, move it a foot left or right so it's never in a single place for too long." This was responded to by a user called Grumbly Old Man. It says, "What's better than F you, I'm building a shed money? F you, I'm building a shed on wheels money." I really did enjoy this story, putting the boat on full display permanently just outside the jurisdiction of the HOA, but well in view for Karen, sounds definitely like malicious compliance to me. My only question though is to wonder if Karen shed a boatload of tears. This next story comes to us from ailweni, piggybacking on other HOA posts. Let's jump right in. But with a twist, I'm on my HOA's board of directors. Okay, I'm the president, shoot me. So our governing documents list any external change that requires an application. Fences, sheds, tree removal, things like that. Oh, and flowers, even annuals. The board didn't write the governing docs, the builder did, but we're still legally obligated to uphold them no matter how ridiculous we find them. We can change them, but number one, it's a big expense. Lawyers want huge money for some reason. Number two, have to get 66% of homeowners to agree to the change. We can't even get 25 people to a meeting, and we have 230 plus homes. Needless to say, it ain't happening anytime soon. Did I mention the board thinks it's a stupid rule? Unfortunately, we can't just ignore the rule if we don't like it. That can lead to homeowners saying things like selective enforcement and neighbor Z planted flowers without permission. I don't need permission to build a full-size bird of prey replica in my backyard. So darned if we do, darned if we don't. Unless In most HOAs, homeowners can request a variance if the rule creates an undue hardship. If a homeowner wants to install something in a setback or easement, etc., the HOA doesn't have to approve it, but the option exists. Cue maniacal cackling. I hatched a plan, an evil plan. I created an online survey where homeowners could request a variance to the application requirement for flowers. Everyone who signed up received a digital waiver request, which was then forwarded to the board. The reasoning for the variance? I believe this restriction is unnecessary and overly burdensome as the exterior of my lot will not change, just the flowers in the flower beds. I agreed to submit applications for all other items in the governing documents. Wanted to include something about the builders being poopy heads, but I saved that for a different day. About 40 homeowners requested the waiver or variance, which the board granted en masse. What do we have here? 20% of homeowners who don't have to follow a rule? Guess that makes the rule unenforceable for everyone. Flowers for you, and you, and you. OP added a quick little edit onto the end. It says, "Please, no hate for being on my HOA's board. I realize that HOAs have bad reps for being governed by power-hungry, petty, and noxious Karens, but my board is pretty chill. Just mow your lawn, pay your dues, and bring in your trash cans." In the comment section for this one, there's a user who pretty much sums up how most of us think about HOAs. The user is named 81 Ranger, and they had a little conversation with a realtor. It says, this is a nice place. Retailer says, yeah, it's got a nice yard, good amenities, and the HOA is pretty, and I'm already in the car leaving. OP responded to this comment with, "Don't blame you. Wish I knew what I was getting into when I joined the HOA." This is an interesting one to me because I learned something from this story. The fact that the HOA rules weren't put in by the actual people on the HOA, they were put in by the builder or the builder's lawyers, however that works. Obviously, that's not the best way to handle it, but in this case, they don't even have a provision to make proper rules that make more sense for their HOA. I guess the HOA could deal with this in a different way though. They could do a mass mailing to everybody in their area and ask them to vote online maybe? That could work. I think more people would actually get involved if they didn't actually have to go to a meeting and could just click a couple of buttons on their computer. Because for a lot of us, that's where we spend most of our time anyway, sitting in front of a computer. Oh, is that just me? Check out all 4 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.